At first I thought I would be the only one not talking about AI. Well, I'm not going to talk about AI today. I'm going to talk about people and how we can empower our teams, because everything that I've been hearing yesterday and today, it's all in the end still done by people, majority of things. So my name is Christophe Abrassart. I'm born and raised in Belgium, and I've been with Terumo for 2 years almost. In a couple of weeks I'll celebrate my anniversary there. And before that I've spent a lot of time working for a Swedish, for Volvo. I think everybody knows Volvo, just like IKEA, so that makes it easy. Mainly in the IT environment, where I started around 2000, so it's already a bit behind us. But there is a good memory that I would like to start with today. And the memory is this group. And you probably see me, I was still looking a little bit younger back in those days here, the second from the right at the bottom. Why am I selecting this picture and this group? Because around 2010, we were at that time still operating very much in a local setting. All the IT, the infrastructure, applications, everybody in every country was working on their own. And we knew that it was about time to globalize, take the next step in maturity there. So time for us to go around the world, see where we have people, and to bring them all together as one team. And you would say, okay, that was probably one good trip. Well, no, it actually took us like 1 to 2 years to finally get to the point where we had a team that was, well, self-sustaining is maybe a big word, but that was operating in one way of working across the globe. Same products, same routines. And as you can see, it was quite culturally a challenging and daunting experience. We had 8 countries there. We had in total, I think 35, 38 people. And obviously we also kept growing. In those days, IT was very much on a growth across the world. I did not know what I was doing at that time. I had no clue what I was getting myself into. I was no line manager. I didn't have a psychology degree or any master in business whatsoever, but still I was apparently good at providing trainings. And that guy next to me, the blonde one, the Swedish guy, he actually asked me, I'm not good at training, can you join me? So I gladly took on the challenge, went over there to India, where we just had hired around, I think at that time it was around 10 people. 10 people, some straight from school, others with 2, 3, 4 years of experience, but still we had a massive environment at that time. In 2010, I think we were rolling about 12, 13, 14 petabytes of data, all kinds of data, application, regular end user data. So it was quite a massive infrastructure that we had to operate for the entire Volvo group, but also for external customers. So we set off, and I remember very well on the flight back home 2 weeks later, that manager told me, this is not my cup of tea. I've been working with my Swedish team, that works very well, but this is way beyond what I feel comfortable for. So he asked me, can you do this for me? I said, yeah, why not? Also then, I did not know what I was getting myself into. But apparently, by 2012, we had also the other divisions that had globalized. And the thing was that from all the people that were there in 2010, they were still there in 2012. So we had an attrition of 0, which actually stood out with the rest of the organization, where we had like 5%, 10%, 12% people come and go. And specifically in India, it's quite common that you flip jobs like you're flipping shoes. So I did not realize at that time what was the magic that we pulled off together? It was only moving further, 2013, 14, 15, that I actually started to realize some of the things that made a big difference on getting such a high-performing team. At the same time, I was getting a bit more leadership training myself. And there was one story that really stood out. And I could find some similarities in why me as an underdog a little bit against other managers who had years of experience, but for one reason or another, I managed to keep the group well together and to make them flourish. Anyone knows this story? Raise to the poll. Yeah. But it goes around in business trainings. It was actually two teams that set out to put a flag on the South Pole as a very first one. And there was one team from the UK with quite a military background, solid funding, strict hierarchy, and they set off with a boat. And then there was these bunch of, they look like, I don't know, crooks or something, but they were actually explorers, sailormen, fishermen from the south of Norway. And what attracted me in this story was mainly this guy, Roald Amundsen, who was leading that Norwegian team. And why did this appeal to me? Because, first of all, he looks like my grandfather, right? No, he looks like my great-grandfather, who lived in Norway in the south, and who was actually also a sailor. He didn't join that group. He just got stuck somewhere in Belgium, left his boat, found a wife, and stayed here. So far for the connotation, the analogy with it, but it inspired me. And in that race, there was quite a difference on how both of these teams were managed. And I could very much relate to the down-to-earth attitude that was described in this story by, I think this is mine and this is yours. But what's the relevancy here? Not very much. It's just a good backdrop for my presentation, because I'm going to talk about 5 elements that I realized years later what truly made a difference. And it's a bit also a chronological 5 steps that you need to take. First of all, trust. And I think that's like kicking in an open door, right? We all need to have trust in a team for a big variety of reasons. But do we spend enough time to let it happen, to let it grow, to let it flourish also? We often are rushing into tasks, very task-oriented these days. But my belief is that we need to invest time to connect in order to allow trust to grow. And not just one time. But start with connecting with the people before you start working with them together, so that you have at least a small foundation of trust to start with. And there are good ways to do that. One of my favorites is a project kickoff. A lot of projects, they are being shaped up, budget is selected, people is selected, and then you start with a kickoff. Well, these things make it big, make it fun, and not too short. Of course, we can't always go for 1 week with 100 people somewhere together, but why not? I've had projects where you involve, in the end, hundreds, sometimes thousands of people. You bring these people together first, the project people, and you work out the plans for the project. And that can take sometimes a couple of days to understand what you have ahead of you. Good project kickoffs, icebreakers, team building activities, and open communication. But open communication is also kicking in an open door. So that is throughout the entire project, all the steps, communication is key. A second one, and that's probably, in my experience, the most costly one if you don't get this one right. make sure that you align around the mission and that you have a shared understanding. Remember the picture. There were guys from Brazil. There were guys from South Korea. So you have already the language barrier there that plays. English is also not my native language, but I'm quite okay with English, but it was not the case with everybody. So take time that you can talk things through, that you can clarify what you actually are setting out for, what you're going to do. Because if you need to repair this one, halfway your project is going to cost you a lot of money. It's going to cost you a lot of motivation and time. Things that you actually don't want to jeopardize in your project. So a shared understanding is extremely key for the success of a project. How can you do this? Well, make sure that you have a solid business case, and not that you have your financials well in place, but that you also have clarity on how does B look like. We're going from A to B, but how does it look like? And there are different techniques to actually crystallize this out so that it becomes clear for people. How exactly will it look? How will it feel? How do I know that we are there or not yet? So a good business case, turn it into a workshop. There are sufficient, well, you can also use AI. Sorry, I mentioned AI. You can also use AI to help you out on preparing workshop, get new techniques into your fingers, but also take proper time to have clarity on your mission. Because if you're in a boat like these explorers and everybody's rowing in a different direction, well, you ain't gonna get far, right? And one that I particularly like, and I've done one 2 weeks ago again, I haven't done it a lot, is on these kickoff events. At the end, when the energy is high in the room, capture that moment. Turn it into a pledging ceremony. You could ask everybody, what are you bringing to the table? Passion, knowledge, courage, whatever. Pledge it, put your name on there, do it. And if everybody does that, that creates a dynamic that is so powerful that people are like excited. I don't want to go home. I want to start right now. So see what you can take out of it, and how much time you can actually invest doing that. Third one, and that's maybe good to mention, the third one and the fourth one are pretty close to one another. They do overlap to a certain extent. Also, do you first establish formal norms before number 4, which I'll show in a minute? Or is it the other way around? Well, let it organically grow. If you come to a moment that you feel that, oh, we have a problem and it's due to not having clarity on how we need to work together on a day-to-day basis, well, then pause, take time, and as a group, form yourself some norms that you can commit to, and that will also bring a form of clarity into the team. Ways to do that? Well, make sure that you have a proper governance on your project, that it's lean, but also sufficient. I've heard about very small teams. That is great, but not everybody has that luxury to stay with small teams. We grow. If you're in an organization that is doing well, your teams are also growing, and that comes with growth pains. So establishing norms is quite key. A workshop that you can consider is working around project values and guiding principles. I'm sure that some of you must have been exposed already to these kind of workshops in the past at a certain time. And that's a one-time activity. You put your charter together on what you commit yourself to do or not to do as a project team, but make sure that you also check on it. And that can take many forms. For people who work in a digital collaboration space and you have your Kanban board or something like that, well, put some smileys there. Take 5 minutes in the beginning to check, is everybody okay? Do we have an energy leak today in the team that we need to address? before we move further. Because I hope that you will have my back when I'm not feeling well, or when my kid is sick at home and I'm coming to work like this, and you can expect the same from me. Make sure you have clarity on that. The fourth one, like I said, very close to the norms, because the norms allow you to collaborate in a constructive manner. Make sure that you practice and build in constructive ways to manage group planning, discussions, opinions, and also disagreements. You will very likely run into disagreements, conflicts. Are they bad by nature? No. It's how you deal with it, which makes a difference. So make sure that you're well equipped there when shit hits the fan, that you know how to deal with it as a group. Also a couple of techniques there. First of all, if you lead by example. Be congruent in what you say and what you do, because saying something and doing something else, there goes your trust. You lose trust with the team. Use simple yet effective collaboration tools. We're swamped with all kinds of new tools, digital tools. Well, just use one that fits the purpose for what you're out to do, or the way you want to operate. If you have a project handbook, in the same way, you also need to have your tools to work with. Feedback mechanisms, and that could be at a coffee machine, but it could also be something very formal that you build in. We all use surveys, but also talk to people, connect. Be genuine there as a leader, and not only as a leader, also as just a project member. Encourage participation. We all know that you have these front runners and you have these laggers. You have them everywhere. You have them every time. Act as a group. It's not the first one that reaches and puts the flag. It's making sure that the last one also gets home. Make sure that you get everybody with you. And manage conflicts as growth opportunities, right? I was not comfortable in 2010 when I was flying to India, and I had no clue that 2 weeks later I would be asked to go back. And I went there maybe 15, 18 times in the span of a couple of years. At first it was pretty uncomfortable, but that's like a need in order to grow, right? In order to learn. So embrace that uncomfortable feeling, just like you need to embrace conflicts if you manage them in a right, constructive and respectful way. And the last one might be maybe less applicable for these explorers, because sustain, well, I'm pretty sure that they didn't stay there for days or even hours after planting the flag. It was bloody cold. It was probably minus 50, minus 60. So in that sense, it does not apply. And you might think, does this apply for a project team? Because it's limited in time. You do your project, you hand over to the business, you wrap up, and you're gone. What's there to sustain? Well, you get a next project, most likely. And again, you will have to work with the same people at some point in time. So you can actually piggyback on what you established there on your first project, but make sure that you keep your saw sharp, right? Don't think that you can copy-paste ways of working charter from one project to the other. It's another constellation, it's another context, other challenges. Do it again with the entire group. So there, and it's quite classic, what can you do? Well, perform regular group reviews of your ways of working. If you feel that things are going good, leave it like that. But do a regular review. Don't wait until things start going wrong. Be proactive on that one by checking with the people. You have your feedback mechanisms. You have your regular meetings where you check below the lines what's living here in the team. Celebrate successes. Yeah, it's easily said. You first need to have them, of course. And in some projects that can take a bit of time, so go check for the low-hanging fruits there if you're looking for celebrations. And even you can be that bold to celebrate failures. At least analyze them to start with. Group learning is no checkbox, it's an attitude. Yeah, but it's often the one thing that is bit done in a rush at the end. Oh yeah, we need to do a lessons learned. Oh yeah. And it's often seen as a checkbox exercise, right? Don't do that. Also there, take the time. And team building activities, well, it's always fun, but don't overdo it either. All put together, this is what I realized after a couple of years and after working more in project mode. So the whole experience with that team, that global team, was very much a runtime team. So there was no limit to it. There was no end date. But it very much also applies in project settings. Make sure that you start with trust, clarity on the mission, establish norms, collaborate well, and get better at what you're good at. And just as a little present, I would like to show you a couple of what I call green flags, confirmations that things are going pretty well. If you ask each other for help, for example, if you show a bit of vulnerability, don't be a big ego there. If you have each other's back, and that can be sometimes very needed, because we also have a personal life. And what happens in that personal life, you don't leave that outside the door. You're one person, right? And we all want to be completely at work. If you can only bring a certain small part of yourself, what a pity, right? So make sure that you have each other's back there. On the mission, shared understanding, shared. Make sure if I ask you or if I ask you, my two project members, what are we going to do? You might come with your own words, but at least let's go in the same direction. So make sure that you have that right. And same on norms, collaboration, and sustain. You also have signals there that can indicate that you're on the good track. You're on the right track there. But it doesn't always go like that. There are also a couple of red flags. When trust is not good, when you have no clear mission explained, when it's very fluffy, you have no clue where you're going. You know you're going south, but is it the South Pole or is it Peru that you're going? So make sure that if you see some of these symptoms here, that you address them and that you do something with it. It could be one-on-one, it could be small group, it could be the entire project team. But don't let these things just happen, because it's just like a little wound. If you don't treat it well, a couple of days later it might grow, become bigger and become toxic. So make sure if you see red flags that you act upon it, and not just if you're a project leader, huh? Even if you're just in the project as a subject matter expert or as an advisory role, open your mouth if you see that things are not going the right way. Might take a little bit of courage, but it's for the benefit of the whole group and the company. So, how do you empower your project teams? Do you grab a coffee with them? Or what else? That's it. Thank you.